Hi, everyone. Harry here. Really big court doings today. In a different video, I've already talked about the emergency appeal to the Supreme Court in the NLRB and Merit Systems Protection Board cases and the whole issue of the administrative state that tees up. Now we have another emergency appeal to the Supreme Court arising out of developments in the case of Abrego Garcia, the man from Maryland, lawfully in this country, with an order not to return him to El Salvador, that the United States, because in its words of an administrative error, swept up into the plane, speared him away to El Salvador, where he now is in this hellhole of a prison. And I'm not even sure prison is the right word for a brutal place, the most really brutal known in incarceration, from which no person ever has gotten out. This is really like something out of Kafka, Orwell, everything all combined together and worse. And so the administration's response naturally has been horrified and proclaim they'll take all efforts immediately to undo this terrible, terrible transgression. No, the very opposite. In an unbelievable show of arrogance and indifference to justice, the administration has been doubling down and saying, yeah, we put him there, but there's nothing to be done now. When the district court judge, Paula Zinnes, entered the order, they came in with pushing her to reconsider, saying, he is in El Salvador now. We have no jurisdiction over El Salvador. There's nothing we can do. Sorry. And just a horrifying and barbaric and false response. So properly read, this, when it goes up to the Fourth Circuit, there's an issue of whether Zinnes has demanded that the U.S. bring him back, which would be akin to bring me the broomstick of the Wicked Witch of the West. You cannot just demand it, but properly read, and Zinnes makes this really clear in a blistering opinion that was entered Friday, denying the motion for reconsideration. The order is to effectuate, and that is the word of the order, his return. In other words, do everything you can. We have coordinated here with the El Salvadoran government to bring these Venezuelans to them. Actually, Abrego Garcia had an order saying, do not take him to El Salvador because he is likely to be the victim of political and gang violence there. So there's that whole dynamic. But we are paying for their incarceration. We obviously have a foreign policy relationship in the works here, and to say that we're powerless, well, is offensive as well as bullshit. Obviously, the command is get on the horn and do anything you can. And I mean, anything. This is such an abject injustice if they have to pay money, promise things, whatever they need to do. And maybe El Salvador knows they have the United States over a barrel. That's because they do have the United States over a barrel because of its insane screw up. Okay, so that's where things stood as of Friday. And the United States, of course, files its emergency appeal to the Fourth Circuit and says, please answer us by Sunday evening at 9, because this order requires us to bring him home, get him back here by Monday tonight at midnight. You gotta wonder, maybe that's an understatement, if the U.S., while this order is in effect, which it remains in effect, has been pulling out all stops as ordered by the court to bring him back through diplomatic channels. I tend to doubt it. In the meantime, though, the request for emergency action goes to the Fourth Circuit, a panel of 3 who rule unanimously, we're not going to dissolve this order. I got to say that's really stunning, and I think bespeaks a little of just how the extreme the Trump administration has been, in what extreme manner it's been operating, and how it's really, really over pushed the notion of we can do whatever we want because of national security. You have 3 judges on the Fourth Circuit, and as I've said before, I think while everyone thinks about who appointed which district court judge, I think the bigger divide to keep our eye on is district court versus Court of Appeals versus Supreme Court, because as you go up the ladder, you're more likely to encounter intellectually abstract judges, or judges who embrace abstract arguments, and in which it can seem in a vacuum less outrageous what the U.S. has done, and they might be more likely to embrace the proposition you can't second guess the executive, even in situations, and we have basically nothing but, in which the administration is lying. But it goes to the Fourth Circuit. They decline. It takes them until this morning, so they don't jump to and do it by Sunday at 9. They do it more by like Monday at noon, 12 hours before he's due to return. And there are 2 long opinions here. One concurred by 2 judges and one by a 3rd judge that still goes for the same result. You gotta return them. The real difference, first of all, the 3rd judge is J. Harvey Wilkinson. Very noteworthy because he is an extremely respected conservative judge, now senior judge, but he has been around for a while and maybe as prolific a feeder to the conservative justices on the Supreme Court as anyone, an impeccable conservative. And he says, yeah, look, we deal here with what I hope is the extraordinary circumstance of the government conceding that it made an error in deporting the plaintiff to a foreign country for which he was not eligible for removal. In this situation, I think it's legitimate for the district court to require that the government facilitate his return. And that's the fair way to read the order. So to the extent he puts any daylight between himself and the other 2, he's saying you cannot order the district court cannot order the administration to bring him home, because the administration doesn't have that ultimate power. But everyone recognizes that. And in practice, it may come down to how much the district court can hold the government's feet to the fire, get back there and pony up a better deal and bring him home, or at what point a judge, in this case Wilkinson, would accept they've really tried hard. But they haven't tried squat. They've just been saying, oh, there's nothing we can do. So now to the 2-person concurrence, here's how they start. The United States government has no legal authority to snatch a person who is lawfully present in the United States, as Abrego Garcia was, and remove him from the country without due process. The government's contention otherwise, and its argument that the federal courts are powerless to intervene, are unconscionable. So we're talking about the shock the conscience, beyond the law area where civilized nations do not go. And if they do, they apologize abjectly, do everything they can to make it better, instead of acting with absolute indifference and arrogance. Even basically Trump and J.D. Vance and Tom Homan have been saying, yeah, it's a good thing we sent him anyway. Yeah, maybe he wasn't supposed to be there, but he's a gang member. He's not. Vance says that. He's been convicted of being a gang member. Just false. What a total tawdry bunch of liars. Liars, I think. And then the Fourth Circuit ends. Look, this is a straightforward case. My good colleague, Judge Wilkinson, believes that I view this case as a simple one, writes Judge Thatcher, joined by another judge. I don't, but I view it as straightforward. As Judge Wilkinson notes, the government, quote, screwed up. The government has admitted as much, and now it must clean up the mess it has made. That's the bottom line here, and they are on such poor footing and, look so callous and lawless in arguing otherwise. Just a very quick legal point to bring it home, because this will be up before the Supreme Court as well. Administration is trying to say, you don't have jurisdiction to order El Salvador to do anything. That's true. There is no jurisdiction to order El Salvador to do anything. I've written a Substack about that this morning that you might check out if you want at Talking Fed Substack. What there is jurisdiction to do is order the administration to do something, and it actually goes cleanly with the federal habeas statute, which says there's jurisdiction for someone who asserts that his custody is unlawful, based on government action. And that's down the middle what Abrego Garcia asserts here, and he's totally, it's undeniable, and it's not just the custody that's unconstitutional that gives him jurisdiction, but it's also just abhorrent. This is Abu Ghraib kind of level stuff, with the administration saying blithely, got to break a few eggs to make an omelet. Maybe there'll be more. By the way, for all we know, there are more down there. There are some tangible indications that there are. The only difference here is that the government has copped to the Abrego Garcia screw up. So the legal argument of no jurisdiction is forcefully rejected by district court and 3 judges, including a notable conservative one, saying, of course, there's jurisdiction to order the remedy and return of someone who was taken here without authority and in fact, in defiance of a judicial order. And it's just a total red herring for the administration to try to pretend that we have this total asinine comment by the press secretary, Catherine Levitt. That's also in my Substack, so I won't belabor it again here. But it's the contrast between the abhorrence of what they've done and the indifference and arrogance of their response is just deafening. So, up in the Supreme Court, they'll hope for some kind of stay. They probably won't get him back tonight anyway, even though they're ordered to. You gotta hope, though, whatever the Supreme Court does, it recognizes the fundamental principle that a federal court has jurisdiction, power to remedy this kind of absolute, ultimate nightmare scenario. And even if they grant a temporary stay to think about it, that's something, but for them to hold otherwise would be an absolute terrible reversal of just the decency of the country, not to mention the legal regime. I don't actually think they'll do it, but that's where our eyes now turn. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.